Hello everybody, welcome to our third day of our 3-day guest speaker event. Today is going to be a bit special. Unlike the previous 2 days of our event, we will have two, not just one guest speakers. These guest speakers are software engineers from Twitter, and they will be talking about their experience in Twitter and as a software engineer in general. And if you do not know, here's a recap on what Code is. Code is a high school-led nonprofit primarily based in New York City that is dedicated to exposing students of all backgrounds to the creativity and innovation that technology brings. Our guest speaker event is meant to give you an insight as to what it is like as a software engineer. For anybody watching who's already involved in the field, we hope that this will give you some new insights that you can apply.
Now, we have our final two speakers today. Yes, you heard me correctly. We have two speakers today, and it's going to be crazy. Both of them are software engineers for Twitter. They're both going to talk about what they do, how they do it, their workplace, and their experiences at Twitter. It's really interesting. Trust me. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Shubha, Swamy, and Selynna from Twitter.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Okay, I guess we can start off by introducing ourselves. I can go first. Hey, everyone. My name is Selynna, and I'm a software engineer at Twitter. I graduated from Cal Poly this past August, so only a couple of months ago, and started full-time at Twitter almost right after. And yeah, at Cal Poly, I studied computer science, so graduated with a classic CS degree, and now I'm here.
That's awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Shubha. I'm also a software engineer at Twitter, graduated from University of Colorado Boulder this past May. I grew up in the Bay Area, and yeah, now I'm back in the Bay Area again working for Twitter. So I guess, do we want to talk about a bit more about like maybe what our interests are and maybe how we met?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so I guess in terms of like interests and stuff, these days I'm still trying to figure out my life post-grad. So, like figuring out how I want to spend my time and stuff. I've been doing a bit of volunteering on the side. In college, I was pretty involved with like a lot of organizations outside of class. So like organizing hackathons and stuff, which is actually how Selynna and I met in the first place. Yeah, we'll talk a bit about that in our next question, but yeah.
Yeah, and as for me, I've also been trying to figure that out a little bit more, especially during COVID as well. But something I've been doing since I was younger was playing the piano and playing the viola. So just been getting really back into music ever since, because it was really hard to like stay in touch with music during college because all the piano rooms are really far away and it's hard to bring an instrument and fit inside a dorm. So just been trying to re-engage. But yeah, during college, I also did a lot of hackathons as well. And actually that started during high school too. But it was a pretty big process of just trying to like start attending hackathons and get more used to how everything goes on in the organizational side of it.
So how did we meet? Okay, so Selynna's been pretty involved in the hackathon space for a very long time. She's a hackathon veteran. And in college, I became involved with hackathons as well. And we're both, I guess hackathons in colleges are mostly overlooked by this organization called Major League Hacking. And every summer they have this huge conference in this campsite in Pennsylvania. And it's really fun. It literally feels like summer camp, you guys. And essentially like attending that conference is how we met. And we actually met like our freshman year of college. So that was like 4 years ago. And then since then we've crossed paths multiple times.
I know, it's so crazy. Like sometimes I remember during sophomore year, Shubha was like interning at a different company. And I was just like walking in SF randomly and I like bumped into her like, wait, is that Shubha? And like we've had so many of those type of instances throughout the years too. So it's been funny.
Yeah. And it's like funny because I've always sort of looked up to Selynna as this person, like she's been a very prominent person in the hackathon tech scene in college. So I kind of like knew of Selynna, and everyone has always said great things about Selynna. And now like I actually get to work with Selynna, which is pretty great.
Same thing can be said about you too, Shubha. I've always looked up to you as well.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next question is, how did you decide on computer science as a career? Okay, so I guess I'll go first. So during high school, like before sophomore year, I was really into the medical industry. I had this preconceived thought that I would always become a doctor. But then after I took bio, I ended up really hating it. So I kind of like put that on the table and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. But then during my sophomore year, I started attending hackathons because people were like, oh, there's free food. Like, why don't you come here? You can just eat a little bit and then you can build something on the side. So then I started going to hackathons and eating their free food, but I also ended up really liking the problem solving and the logic and the community behind hackathons and the things you get to build there. And I figured, oh, like I might as well just make this my career because this is something that I really enjoy doing in my spare time. And if I'm this passionate now, like I will probably enjoy like what I'm doing from years to come. And yeah, so like I decided to major in CS in college. And I mean, there were like a ton of ups and downs, right? Like APCS, I did not, well, okay, I passed that, but like not by that much. And like, I think those are really hard points to be in, like where you want to do something so badly, but you know you're not very good at it. And just like getting past that through high school and college and just understanding that like, oh, it's going to be hard, but like at least computer science makes sense for me. Just really made me decide that this was the career I wanted to go down.
Wow. And it's really funny how like free food was the thing that motivated you to go to hackathons, because I feel the same too. So I would say I mostly got into computer science because of the influence of my peers. In high school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But like I think growing up in the Bay Area, I did sort of have this privilege of being surrounded by, like the tech place of the world. So I definitely had a lot of peers who were like into hackathons and like, they're like, I'm going to do computer science. And honestly, I was like, you know what, might as well try it. And then in college, there was a phase where I was like still unsure whether computer science was a thing for me. But then I heard about hackathons and someone's like, there's free food. So I was like, might as well go and try out and see what it's like. And I really ended up liking that experience. And also because I was a bit unsure of what I wanted to do in the beginning, computer science really seemed like the thing that would allow me a lot of flexibility in combining all my interests in sort of these other areas as well. And also, like, not gonna lie, but one of the things that was really nice about pursuing a degree in computer science is knowing that there were really great job prospects. Like if I was gonna spend so much resources like studying and paying for college, I better have a good job coming out of college. So that was also another thing.
That's such a good point, though. Job security is really important. And yeah, there's just so many opportunities in computer science. Like it's very hard to not be able to find a job. So we're definitely lucky we're in this industry.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like there's such a taboo around like, like people are usually like pursue your passions and stuff, which is important. But on the other hand, we also kind of need to survive at the end of the day. So no shame. Ooh, this is a good one. Okay. I think I'll start. I think one of the things that really stands out to me about Twitter is sort of the impact it has on society and the larger picture on our everyday lives, whether it's Black Lives Matter or elections or even COVID. Like Twitter is so central to so many of the conversations we're having in society today. And that's not just in America, but also, it serves as a platform for people all across the globe. So I think with people who work at Twitter, you can sort of really feel this energy of how people feel closely connected to this impact that they're bringing. You know, like every day when I go to work, like even though I'm working on pretty focused on like one set of like software engineering problem that we solve, that my team does. But on the other hand, it does feel like I have this like overall connection to like an impact I'm bringing into Twitter. So it really feels like I'm working on something that's truly making a difference. And in terms of software engineering, I feel like Twitter has so much power on the world to impact millions of users. And Twitter is still a pretty small company for the amount of impact it has. So there's only about 4,000 people at Twitter compared to like, you know, other really big companies where they have tens of thousands of engineers. So whatever we do work on at Twitter is stuff that really matters. And I want to talk about something else, which Selynna and I have been talking about a lot, is that sort of like free food and kind of perks that we have. And this is not meant to brag, but, you know, we obviously feel very privileged to work at a place where we feel taken care of. But we do have lots of really great free food in the office. And, you know, I don't know if you all recently saw, last year Twitter announced that basically any employee can work from anywhere that they want permanently. So I think that really speaks volumes to like the way Twitter respects its employees and the way they place trust.
No, that's such a good point. I think the first time I like walked inside Twitter, I was like, oh my God, there's 6 cafeterias. This is so crazy. But yes, I totally agree about the impact that Twitter has. It's so huge, and I'm really glad that we work for a company that actually tries to turn it into the right way. Because if like Twitter's morals were off, or if Twitter was doing the wrong thing in the world, like it would feel really unfortunate, like making such a big impact but in a wrong way. Okay, just to add on to that question, another thing that I really enjoy is the mentorship at Twitter. There's this culture of like always learning, and if you're not uncomfortable, well, you should be uncomfortable. And like as a software engineer that's just starting out in the industry, I've always been paired with like really good mentors, whether it's just through full-time or through my internships. There's always been someone to support me, and you also get that support from like all the other people on your team and in your org. Everyone wants you to be succeeding in learning, and people want to help you enable your growth, but if you ask for help. And yeah, like everyone's such a great resource. Everyone's so smart at Twitter. And if you ask people for help, like they'll drop their things and help you. And I feel like because of this, like I've been able to learn so much and grow like a ton personally and professionally, because they can teach me about code. They can teach me about like what it means to be a better communicator. Like what sorts of questions to ask your managers, like who in the company you should talk to, things like that. And yeah, like without the good mentorship at Twitter, I feel like there would be a lot less successful engineers that come out of the company.
Totally. I relate to that so much. And every day I wake up and I'm like so grateful I work at a place where I really enjoy working with the people that I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have such a good team culture here. What is one of the biggest challenges you've faced trying to break into the computer science industry? I can go first on this one. So I think, so one of them is like balancing schoolwork, side projects, and organizations like in college, but also trying to like do all your other things, like schoolwork, and like having that balance of like work you're doing that's mandatory versus things that you're passionate about is kind of hard to like combine at the same time. And like I think breaking into the computer science industry is a lot about like being able to like do your own projects, and like basically show that like you're a capable computer scientist. But school kind of like forces you down a different direction, where you're like, you got to do like your homework, your projects. And I feel like the computer science industry is like very different from what is presented during college. And I don't know, like breaking it, I mean, it's hard, right? There's like so many people that you're trying to like stand out across. And it's like not, I want to say like competing is like not good against your peers, right? But just like knowing how to like do enough things and have enough projects, and do well enough on your schoolwork to be able to stand out across like all of your peers and all the people that you're competing against, trying to get into the computer science industry. Because ultimately, like when you're going for jobs, there's only a limited amount of slots, and it's always like a really painful thing not to be able to get into one of those.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, you know, like it's definitely tough. And I think that's something I've had to learn how to deal with over time. You know, I feel like a lot of people talk about this concept of like getting lucky in terms of like opportunities and stuff. But, you know, a lot of it is also you just taking the initiative, whether that's like working on projects or actively learning. Um, you know, I think once someone told me that luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and, you know, so learn how to create your own luck. And I think that's one of the hardest things I've had to learn as well during my college career, is how to develop a growth mindset. And it's actually something that we really value at Twitter as well. You know, seek out as many opportunities as you can, whether that's hackathons or making new friends or attending conferences or webinars like these. You know, at some point, you know, it might sound random that you're doing so many things, but you never know what an opportunity might open up. And, you know, don't limit yourself just because, you know, you're so young. You know, you never know what you're going to find. And the great thing about all your lives is that your adult life hasn't even started. So really take advantage of that, you know, like approach life in general with curiosity and learn as much as you can. I know this all sounds really cliche and vague, but trust me, like the older you get, the more you'll realize how true that stands. And, you know, just realize that learning means that this goes beyond like your classroom and taking tests. You know, just try to experience as many like new experiences you can. And Selynna, another thing that I wanted to talk about is sort of your experience being a woman in tech. Because, you know, as for whoever's underrepresented in technology, it's always challenging. So what's sort of like your experience been like?
Yeah, it's honestly been hard. I feel like there were a lot of guys like throughout high school and college that were like, "Oh, you're in CS. Like, are you in there just because you're a girl?" And I feel like there's a lot of these like bad preconceived notions from a lot of people in the computer science industry, like whether you like it or not. And it's always really hard to get past that judgment, get past like all the people trying to drag you down, and just also make yourself successful and like make a step on the world. Yeah, it's definitely been frustrating. I've definitely like been told like weird things by other dudes in the CS industry, and just like went home and cried about it. But ultimately, like we realized that like there will always be people like this, and it's like for us to not take personally and just ignore, because their opinion doesn't matter. Like we work for ourselves. We're gonna be like the best people possible, but like we can't let anyone get in the way of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I've had a countless amount of like those experiences as well. Like definitely know like it's not going to be easy or it's going to be challenging, but through that process, you know, you're going to learn a lot, and don't let the haters get to you. Like that's really it. Okay, I can kind of take this on first. So, you know, like since I have a lot of time these days, because I'm mostly at home working, and pretty much just staying home, I decided to volunteer for a couple of projects. So one of the things I volunteer for is an organization called Bluebonnet. And what they do is provide tech support for political campaigns around the country. So this past election season, you know, it was really interesting because obviously it was a very like tense election season, but also like, you know, the organization was trying to get as many progressive campaigns help with technology. So that was a really great experience. My team and I ended up volunteering for this congressional campaign in New Jersey. And we did a bunch of like data analysis work, or like writing like sort of software for them, and just providing whatever tech support this campaign needed. And, I realized that this is really powerful because it makes you realize how impactful these technological skills that you learn in school are like important to things that affect you in everyday life. So that was a really great experience. And then another thing I also volunteer for is this organization called CodePath. It's an organization that provides technical preparation courses for underrepresented students in the tech industry. And what I've realized increasingly over time is that giving back is very important because I got to the place I am today with so many other people's help. So I'm glad that I'm able to give back in some form.
And I just want to say kudos to Shubha. It is really hard to give up your time for so many awesome things. Like volunteering to help other people is like, it's never easy to do, especially on such a consistent basis too. So kudos. So for me, one of the most interesting projects I've worked on is called Selves. So I went to this hackathon in Vatican City back during my sophomore year of college, I think. And yeah, I met a bunch of people from like all around the world, and it was organized by some Harvard kids. But over there, we ended up building like a HoloLens app that helps dyslexic people like train themselves to read better. And it was like my first time working with HoloLens, and there were a bunch of like Microsoft people there. So they were able to mentor me and help me like better understand like how does augmented reality, or like what is the best way to develop for augmented reality, and what is the best way to make like a good user experience that can help someone. And we ended up like winning something at the hackathon, so it was pretty awesome. But then afterwards, we ended up submitting our project to a couple of different competitions, one of which was Microsoft Imagine Cup. And we figured that like, oh, like this is a pretty, this is like a really good idea. It is hard to execute, and we just want to see like how far we can take it in a competition. And so we ended up getting, we ended up like placing in the United States finals, and then in the world finals. And so it was really cool, like being able to travel so much and like have so many different experiences with the people in my team who are like not from California. And I met at that Vatican hackathon. Yeah, and just be able to like meet a bunch of people through that experience. And like, while I don't work on Zelixa anymore, like being able to like touch the technology behind that was also like very, very interesting. I've always been blocked into web development as an industry. And so that was like my first experience at like really delving deep into something new.
That is so cool. Can you talk a little bit about your experience about what it was like traveling to like a new country for a hackathon and the whole Microsoft Imagine experience? That just sounds so awesome.
Yeah, of course. Man, it was actually pretty wild. That was my first, or going to Vatican City was my first time outside of the US. And after I landed, I was just like, holy shit, like everything is so different. Like everyone's really nice here. No one speaks, or not a lot of people speak English. So there's like this whole innate language barrier that you have to get past in order to like get to like the actual hackathon itself. And they brought in people from, I think, like over 30 something countries. So you could really feel like the diversity at that event. Like everyone had a different background. No one was just the like classic coder person from Silicon Valley, right? Like you got people from Greece, you got people from Malaysia, things like that. And so like I still keep in touch with people to this day. So it was just a very interesting experience with a bunch of different people. And for Microsoft Imagine Cup, that was also pretty different as well. It was a lot of people around the US for just the United States competition. And like everyone was so smart there. Like those are the people that you see like doing side projects in their free time, and just want to like improve the world and make it better. And same thing with the world finals as well, except that just had people from like a bunch of different countries around the world as well. So very similar to VHACs. And yeah, like everyone wanted to just do their best, make a good product, and like meet some cool people. So really cool experience.
That is so awesome. While we're on the topic of hackathons, what's been sort of like the biggest thing or value you've gotten out of like being a part of that community?
Ooh, that's a good question. I have to say, like, the different people I've met. I want to say that like most of my closest friends are from hackathons right now. And like if I hadn't gone, like I probably would have a very different set of close friends. Which is like not a bad thing, right? But I do enjoy my current friends right now. And like I think with hackathons, it gets so repetitive over time. And I'm sure like you've felt that as well. Like it's always the same, like wake up, code, go to sleep, eat, code, etc. Right? And like, but the people are always different in a way. Like you'll never meet the same like two people that you do at a previous hackathon, at a future hackathon, sorry. And like there will always be like interesting people working on interesting things. Like people are there to like have a good weekend, to build something in their free time, but this is something that they're passionate about outside of school. And so it's always really inspiring being able to like touch different parts of the community, especially when you go to hackathons, not just like in your local community, but also outside.
Yeah, plus one to all of that. So yeah, if any of you listening ever have an opportunity to attend a hackathon, you know, like it's highly recommended by both of us. Okay, how is the college engineering experience different from the ones in the real world? Okay, I can talk a bit about this. So the real world is definitely like compared to like your college or high school years, you have a lot more freedom, and this could necessarily mean it's good or bad. In high school, you know, you sort of have this obligation of like going to school, doing your homework, doing extracurriculars, you know, your family obligations. In college, you get more degrees of freedom, which is really great, you know, because you get to really figure out what you like and don't like, what type of person you want to be. If you're like Selynna, you get to like travel and stuff, which is all great. But, you know, in college, you're still limited to like going to class, and there is definitely a set of expectations for you to do like X, Y, Z. But now in post-grad, you know, you're completely in charge of your life and all the choices that you make. It's completely up to you to do whatever you want with your life. So, you know, like you get to choose who you want to be, how you want to spend your free time, or even what you want to work in or as. You know, and this can be really great. But on the other hand, it does bring up a lot of like tough questions as well, you know. Like you start thinking about things like what matters to me the most, or what kind of person do I want to be? And, you know, there's also, I feel like a lot of unlearning that you thought was sort of the right way to do things in life until now. But now you're like really just opening up your eyes to the bigger world and reflecting, you know, maybe this isn't the best way to do X, Y, Z. But yeah, so that's been sort of my experience post-grad.
Yeah, I want to say plus one to that though. Just because like I think now that we're adults, like we've seen so much more now that we've gone to college. Like high school and like the years before that are pretty sheltering, honestly. And I think a lot of us don't realize that until we go to college for the first time and we have that freedom to do whatever we want. And yeah, like the fact that it is so eye-opening, like it's a hard but good transition for people who can like start to realize things about the world around them.
Yeah, totally.
I guess on my end for the college engineering experience, I think there's two things. So one of them is like the focus on theory in schoolwork versus side projects in the real world. I think that school always pushes you to like, oh, like do your projects, do your homework. And like, that's super important to make sure that you get the grades that you want. But it feels like a pretty big contrast to like what you're doing in the real world. So side projects and like other projects with your teams during internships and full-time jobs. And honestly, like it's kind of frustrating, right? Because you're forced to do all these like school projects on your own and you're siloed. And if you work with other people, you're considered cheating. and you like can't get help from online, otherwise that's considered plagiarism. But like it's really not like that in the real world. A lot of us like work on side projects and we like copy code snippets or Stack Overflow or like ask other people for help, and that's like all very, very encouraged because it's about like collaboration. It's about open source. It's not about like being closed in your own silo and like not being able to talk to other people and get help. And I think like that makes some people with a software engineering degree like a lot more, I guess, like unwilling to ask for help. And so that's why it's always really great to like be able to intern like during your years in college, so you understand that that schoolwork is like not the type of software engineering that you will be doing in the real world. Sorry, my throat is kind of weird right now. And yeah, like internships like really help you understand that like mentorship is key. Being able to like find resources from whether it's like the other engineers at your company or online is really important. And so yeah, like Shubha said earlier, it's a lot of unlearning during college personally, but also professionally as well.
Yeah, totally. And I also want to emphasize the interning part. I think like interning at various companies kind of really opened up my eyes during college, and it was sort of just telling me like, you know, this isn't how like the real world works, and there's a lot of other things to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, and I just want to stress that like it's also great to have multiple internships too, because one company can be, or it can like make you kind of narrow-minded, but then like when you go to a different company, you can see like all the things that are similar and different in the industry. So it's always a good experience to be able to touch like multiple companies and experience multiple things.
Yep.
What advice would you give to your younger selves? Shubha, do you want to go first? I need to
yeah. So let me see. So I think if I were to kind of give myself one piece of advice, that would be the sooner you stop trying to please people, the better off you'll be. Sometimes people just don't have the best interest in mind, or even if people do, you know, they think that they're right and that there's no better way. You know, I once heard someone say this, like, don't take advice from anyone you wouldn't swap places with. And I think that holds really true. You know, like if you're constantly trying to like fulfill other people's expectations, you're never going to be happy yourself, because you're like constantly chasing like the expectations of other people rather than the thing that brings you happiness. So just know that it's not selfish to like prioritize yourself and your happiness and the things that bring you joy. You know, and that's to say like make the right decision and, you know, have sort of trust in that decision. But it's sort of okay to like not do the things that your sort of parents expect you to do or like other people tell you to do. Yeah. And then whatever you do, like, you know, and you mess up, let's say like don't criticize yourself too much for messing up, because that's just part of life.
Yeah, failure is so important. But yeah, on that similar vein, my piece of advice would be like focus on doing what you love and not what other people love. I think like during high school, like your parents like tell you to do like X thing because they think you'll like it, or like Y thing because they think like it'll be beneficial to you in college. But honestly, like if you have something that you love, just focus on it. Like it's totally okay to pursue that to the end. I felt like when I was in high school and college, my parents were always like, "Oh, don't do hackathons. Like they're really bad for your health if you keep staying up like 24 hours in a row." But like after focusing on it, I feel like I was able to like get to where I wanted to be just because like I was so passionate about it. And like if my parents had stopped me, I don't think I would be like where I am today. Like I wouldn't be as good as coding. I wouldn't be able to like do public speaking. I wouldn't be able to do like a bunch of other things that have stemmed from hackathons. And yeah, and I feel like if you like are passionate about something, like you'll like dive into it deeper always, which is never a bad thing, right? Like if you're passionate about it.
Yep, totally agree. Cool. So I think the next part of this is like the Q&A part of it. So are there any questions? Let us know in the chat, and I'm guessing the team will put them up here.
Shubha, here's a question for you while we're waiting. What has been your best experience so far at Twitter?
Ooh, there's so many, but okay, honestly, it would probably be our summer we interned in, what year was that? 2019.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think this was like pre-COVID, so we were all in the office, and like we really got to build really great relationships, and I think that's what made that time so special. Like, I just remember making like so many good memories, whether that was like grabbing breakfast with all the interns like before my work day, or going on our intern events. There's just so many just good times.
I feel that. I like think back to it a lot, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I miss the in-person aspect so much.
Yeah. What's been your favorite part so far?
Ooh. Also, probably that summer and meeting so many new people. I think like a lot of my closest friends right now, like also came out of that internship. And I don't know, it's just like, how does 3 months working with someone else like bring you that close together, right? And it just like feels really good knowing that there are a bunch of like other really great people to make good memories with, and like really smart people to work with.
Totally. What would you say has more demand, CS or electrical engineering? Do you have an answer?
I think it's a hard answer, and like this is a cop-out answer, but I want to say it depends. It really depends on like the industry that you're going into, or the industry, or like the types of products that you're trying to build. Like let's say you're at like Apple, there's like a lot of demand for both CS and electrical engineering. But for a place like Twitter, where we don't have as much hardware, it would obviously be more CS. And so it's really hard to say, and there is a lot of demand for both fields. CS because of like how much the world depends on software, and electrical engineering for how much the world depends on hardware. So I don't have a good answer, but it does depend. But there is demand regardless for both of them.
Yeah, totally. Sort of related, but I also want to say I feel like I've worked with so many people who don't necessarily have a major in computer science or electrical engineering. So that's an option as well. Just because you didn't major in computer science doesn't mean you can't work as a software engineer.
That's so true. One of the teams that I was on last year, it was just so crazy, like hearing that literally none of them had a CS degree.
Wow.
And I just thought it was so strange, right? Because like usually you would think like, oh, if they're at a really great company like Twitter, obviously everyone would have a CS degree, right? And so it was just a very shocking realization that like you really don't need one. Like all you need is you just got to be able to code, right? And that's like getting more and more accessible to everyone. Do you recommend college to get into the industry? Is it necessary?
I'll give my take on it. So my take on it is yes, I think so. Not to say that there are, plenty of people, and I think we've increasingly seen this, of like people not going to college and being in the tech industry. But I think also those people also come from a place of like privilege. I don't think we're at a point in the tech industry where your degree doesn't matter like completely. Like I think we're to a point where it doesn't matter what your major is, but maybe I wouldn't say we're necessarily at the part where like not having a college degree matters, or doesn't matter. Yeah, just if you're like on the verge of it, I think there's a lot to it. Really just think about sort of the position you're in and what might be the value. But I think for the majority of the people, I would definitely recommend a college degree. But, you know, there's also people who don't have college degrees and are very successful. So
yeah, and just to add on to that, well, also just a preface, I have the same view as Shubha. I definitely recommend college to get into the industry. It is possible to make it without one, but I think those people are outliers compared to the normal. And I just want to add on that, like, if you're trying to get a job in a different country, it's much harder to do so without a degree. Like in the US, you'll probably be okay. Like there will always be opportunities if you don't have a degree and still want to pursue CS. But yeah, it's so much harder abroad. Like they care a lot more about like making sure you have the right credentials to be able to get into a company. And so it just unlocks a lot more things besides job security in the US.
Yep. How's your first day working at Twitter like, Selynna?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. So I guess I'll consider my first day like the first day I interned with Twitter, which was back in 2019. I remember like waking up super early to get to the office, but seeing like about 100 other like really smart people there, and I was like, oh my god, there are so many people here I don't know. But it was really nice, like once I got to know a lot of people, like hearing what schools they came from, their backgrounds, their stories, like what they were passionate about. And like I ended up getting to meet my team during the first day I was working. And it was just so cool realizing that like, oh, like my team, there's like females on my team. I have a really tall manager, things like that. But usually like we don't like do much code on the first day. It's a lot of just meeting people and socializing yourself like with the company and the culture that we have there.
Yeah, totally agree. I definitely, the first day was just a lot of like getting to know more about Twitter and, you know, like kind of socializing with other people. But I remember waking up super early as well, lots of excitement. I think when we walked into sort of our room, they're like, you can go get breakfast. And I remember just being so overwhelmed because there was like this whole buffet of like, just we could pick whatever food you wanted. Think like college or high school cafeteria, but way better. Like
with the food being on par.
yeah, like literally, I don't want to say like it's as fancy as like Michelin restaurants, but honestly, sometimes it does feel like that. Like the food is pretty dang good. Anyways, besides the food, it was great meeting so many people from like all across the country, and it was really nice to see that at least in our intern class, I felt like the university recruiting team had done a pretty good job of like recruiting really diverse candidates from like all over the place. I also remember like meeting interns from like the Singapore office, which was so cool. They had like flown out to San Francisco and, you know, just meeting so many new people. And it's really exciting because when you're an intern, basically everyone in the company really likes you and they're trying to sell you Twitter. So we had like all these speakers come in and tell us more about Twitter and how we're going to have such a good time. And yeah, it was good memories.
Do Twitter employees get verified? Usually no. I think you have to be a VP level or above to get verified.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get there one day.
Hopefully.
How are group projects like in the industry? Ooh, that's a really good question. So like we touched on earlier, group projects are a lot about collaboration and getting help from each other. So you don't have to like be siloed into your portion. Like it's totally okay to like pair program with the other people that you're working with, to repeatedly ask them for help, within reason, of course. But yeah, a lot of it is just making sure that you all can build things together and simultaneously and be able to scope things well together. Otherwise, like everything gets really messy. It's hard to hit deadlines. It's hard to like put your code. It's hard to put your code together because there's so many other things going on that you touch. So yeah, just a lot more organized, and like people are very willing to collaborate.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing I feel like is different from like college group projects versus like industry group projects. I don't know about your experience, but I'm pretty sure you felt the same as well. Like in college, when you have group projects, it's like usually one person, like, like going
Yeah.
all in and like kind of leading the project. Well, I really feel like in, our daily workday now, it's more sort of equalized across everyone on the team. I think the one thing is that everyone on the team brings a valuable perspective to the table. And I think people really value that. So, like one person might be like really good at doing something or like know a lot about like this one technology or like service. And, everyone gets to kind of bring their skills to the table. And also it's a lot more organized. There's sort of like a set process in place. So as like software engineers, we're not only coding the whole time, but a lot of it is also just like researching about like, what do we want to build and why do we want to build it? And then how are we going to build it? And then once we get to the how, it's like having discussions with multiple other teams, not just your team, about, what could be sort of like the pros and cons about like building the system, or if we go about building it this way, like, is there a better way to do it? And then once you kind of figure out that part, you kind of write up this like design document about how you think you're gonna build this whole new software or like system. And then, multiple other people review it and give you their feedback. So it's definitely a very iterative process of like feedback. And then once you get that approved, you kind of like start the process of like actually implementing that. But then the same code base that you're working on is also being worked on by like all these other engineers. So there's definitely like a lot of collaboration. And like once you do that part, there's also like the testing part and making sure that your system works. Something that a lot of software engineers do is this thing called on-call, where, once we put the software out into the real world, we're basically responsible for it. And sometimes, things go down. Either there's a spike in like increased traffic if there's like a really hot topic that's trending, or like something that's happening in the world, or like sometimes things just break. So you get like this little page on your phone, which is basically like a phone call or like a really loud dinging noise that is basically calling your attention. And then you kind of have to attend to it and figure out what's wrong or how are you going to fix it. So it's a whole iterative process. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, and I guess a good way to put it is like, you're not doing the group project for the sake of doing it. You're doing it for the sake of doing it well. And I think like that's the biggest contrast to college, where it's like you just want to get it done. You just want to grade on it. But yeah, in the real world, like you got to do it well. Otherwise, like things are going to kick you in the ass later on. How do you cope with burnouts? Oof, that's a loaded question. I can go first. I think I've been very bad at coping with burnouts. In the past, like I would just let myself get burnt out, and just like stay burnt out because like I didn't have time to deal with it, or at least I felt like I didn't have time to deal with it. But I think like now I've really tried to like pace myself when I work. Like if I need a break, I need a break. If I need to take time off, I'll take time off. And I think like that's the nicest thing about being able to work a job that lets you take time off whenever you need it, or like realign your priorities. It's like it's allowed me to become a lot more flexible and just avoid burnout a little bit more easily. Like I remember like every single internship I had, I would always be like so tired by the end of the second month because I was just like coding and coding with like no end to sight. But now like I've been able to like really slow down and catch my breath when I need to. And that's like helped me like stay a lot like happier with my job, and just be able to like balance everything a little bit better as well.
Yeah. And I think it's been tough, during COVID, especially, because we're just constantly bound to our computers. But I think the main thing is like being aware of it and just listening to yourself when you do need that break. we're very grateful at Twitter. We have like rest days, so we have like a day off every month, and it's pretty normal for people to just take like mental health days off if they need it. I think on a more personal front, I was talking with Selynna about this the other day, is like getting to a place of like self-discipline, and like, like some days I just, want to keep working even beyond like 5 or 6 p.m. But, it's like forcing myself to shut down my computer and go on a walk or go work out. And one of like the best advice I've gotten is from like actually this director at Twitter. And what she said is like, life is a lot like balancing a bunch of like glass spheres. And let's just pretend like these glass spheres are like hanging from like the ceiling or something. You don't want to let one sphere get too heavy and just let that fall and crack. Life is kind of like managing all these different areas together. So, like if you're having a tough time at work, it's like figuring out how can I balance that with like my physical health and like working out, or like relying on my personal relationships to help balance that out. Or if I'm like having a hard time somewhere else, it's like, what else can I do to help balance that?
I really like that glass sphere metaphor. That is really good.
Yeah.
What topics and classes in college did you find the most useful towards your career?
Ooh. Honestly, a lot of like the project-based computer science courses I took were really helpful. Honestly, okay, so like, not gonna lie, I had a pretty hard time towards like the beginning of my computer science career. Like, and a lot of people say those are like the easier courses you take, but honestly, these more general courses were the ones I had a harder time with. As you like grow more into your major, like your junior, senior year, you get to take a lot of like specialized courses in areas that you're interested in. So like I got to take one on like big data, which was like a project based course, or like even natural language processing, and like learning things about like stuff that you're more curious about helps a lot.
And one of the classes I took was a computer ethics class. I don't know if you had to take something similar, Shubha, but it was really good to get me to think more critically about like the like influence tech has on the world, and like my part in playing that. Like I remember during freshman year, I was like, okay, like by senior year, I'm gonna go work at Facebook no matter what. And like not to shit on Facebook or anything, but like after taking that class, it made me really understand like how do I like put this like not badly? It made me like really think about like the role like Facebook has in the industry and on people. And like obviously like Facebook does some good things, but I think there was a lot of things that I just like didn't want to think about because of the prestige Facebook had. Anyways, that's a really specific example, but ethics like really helps you understand like, oh, like if I'm working for this company or if I'm working on this project, like what type of ethical consequences does this have? Like, will this cause people to feel pain, be unhappy? Will this like put a good mark on society? Things like that. And they're like considerations that you should make, but a lot of people end up forgetting. But at least like the ethics course like really instills in you that like, oh, you have to be constantly thinking about these things because we as engineers are the first line of defense. Like if we don't build it, like it won't get built.
Yep, that's so important. Yeah, I honestly wish I took more courses in like ethics or like psychology or sociology in college. That's something I wish that I really did. And especially I think, working at a place like Twitter and really seeing how it impacts people every day. I feel like we kind of think about the ethics aspect a lot.
At Twitter, what is your code primarily used for? Or I guess like, are we talking about a project maybe?
Yeah. I guess I could try to answer this, but like we pretty much use code for like everything. including like building the platform or building tools that support other teams, or I'm not really sure what the question is asking, but.
Or Shubha, how about we change it a little bit? Like,
Okay.
how about you tell us like what you do on your current team at Twitter?
Okay. So on my current team, I work on a team called Auth Platform, which is part of a bigger team called Core Security and Auth Services. And basically what we do is build services to protect users' data. So a lot of you might have known about like sort of the Cambridge Analytica scandal that happened with Facebook a few years ago, where basically Cambridge Analytica was able to create these like third-party apps and then authorize it with Facebook and then grab all the user data. So basically my team writes software to make sure that doesn't happen. How about you?
So I work on this team called Revenue Ads and not ads and forecasting, Revenue Audiences and Forecasting. I make this mistake every single time I talk about my team. But we work on deterministic targeting for Twitter ads. Basically, we say like, oh, when you want to target someone on Twitter, say by a keyword or a location, like I want to serve this ad to all the people in San Francisco. We decide like where or like how or the logic behind like targeting the different people. So we're the ones that are helping people filter out like all the different kinds of people that they can filter or add to it.
Next time I get an ad on Twitter, I'm going to think about you, Selynna. Okay, I guess there's one more question. Maybe this will be your last question. How did you make yourself stand out when applying for a job? Ooh. I can go for it. Or
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, mine's pretty general. But I think it was everything kind of we talked about in this talk, like a combination of like working on side projects and like getting experience through hackathons. And I think through those experiences, we were able to sort of craft this narrative around like, you know, what stuff we worked on and what things we're interested in working on. So I think that really helped stand out. Like I remember like, because I'd attended hackathons and stuff, I sort of had this experience working like with APIs on the back end side of software engineering. So in my Twitter application, I remember mentioning that. And then when I interned at Twitter, I remember my manager saying that, oh, like when I read your application, you talked about how you wanted to work on the back end and stuff. So that's why like your application sort of stood out. And I was like, oh, so you guys actually do read like the stuff that we write. How about you?
I had kind of a similar experience, except I wrote something about like hackathons in my application. But yeah, just to answer the question generally first, it was a lot of just working on side projects and doing what I was interested in, so hackathons. And like, I feel like every single recruiter that has talked to me has always been like, oh, like your experience with hackathons has been like pretty cool. Like, can you tell us more about that? And so they really notice your extracurricular involvement. Like it's honestly like not enough just to do your schoolwork and call it a day. But like to find other things you're passionate about, like speaks volumes about you as a person, especially to people trying to hire you. Because a lot of good companies are trying to hire for like you as a person and that you will bring something to the table. Because like people want something different when they hire people. And yeah, like being able to like set yourself aside with like your interesting projects or what you're passionate about, like speaks volumes.
Yep, totally. With that being said, I do want to be mindful of our time here. So thank you so much, Selynna. This has been really fun doing this panel with you. And yeah, if you want to reach out to either of us, like Twitter is a great place. I think they're going to put the slide up where it has our Twitter handles. But Selynna, do you want to like, oh, there we go. So yeah, definitely follow Selynna and I. We're available on Twitter. Yeah, this was really fun.
Yeah, thank you, Shubha. This was really awesome. And yeah, I haven't spoken on a panel in a while. So it was really good getting back into this with you.
Yeah.
And lots of valuable advice from you as well.
Cool.
Thank you all for joining us today on the third and final day of Code's guest speaker event.
We'd like to give a big thank you to Shubha and Selynna for the amazing insight and advice they provided, and for choosing to partake even with their busy schedules to make an event like this possible. I personally learned so much, and I really hope you all learned something useful from this event as well. It was an amazing experience, and we all loved it. If you have any questions, you can DM us at BeachRacesCode on Instagram, or if you prefer to communicate by email us at team@techcodes.org. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, take care, and look out for more amazing events from Code.